All right, good evening. We're live on the air. Welcome to the Sweet Talk. I am your host, Kim Matina. I am a technology teacher. I am a Google certified trainer and a gold product expert in the Google for Education, Jamboard, and CS First Help forums. And today I have on my show the Miss Lynda Moore. She was on my show a few months ago, and she went over how she digitized her math classroom, and she wants to share more information with you on how she uses Google Slides and Google Forms in her classroom. And as I don't want to make a mistake, so Lynda is a 29-year teaching in education.
Right.
So that's amazing right there. And she teaches high school math, right? High
Right.
school math.
Mhm.
And she uses all the G Suite tools in her math classroom and digitizes her whole entire classroom with her students and feedback and everything. It's really amazing. So welcome to the show, Lynda.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here again.
Yeah, thanks for being on. You were the second person that has made multiple appearances. So
Oh, yay.
thank you.
Yay.
It's all about paying it forward and helping
Right.
others and learning at the same time. Like we were just saying, we're always given PD and we never get PD. And this is
Right.
just our way of learning from each other, helping others at the same time and paying it forward. And then, just kind of, using the tools as best as we can to align it with our need and our subject area. So I'm really glad to
Right.
have you on today. I know you wanted to talk about Google Slides and Google Forms.
I do.
So I'm going to just let you take it away because I know
Okay.
you have a lot to talk about.
Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and share screens. And can you see?
Yes, I could see.
Okay. So I want to just talk to you. Last time I talked to you in the beginning about my math lessons, and you'll remember that I went through one of the whole slide decks. But I want to kind of take a different approach because math is hard to do this with. People think, but in the end, it really is pretty easy. But I want to focus a little bit on a history class that I've been working with, and I just want to go through. It's not as detailed or it won't take quite as long, but this teacher teaches U.S. history, and I just want to talk about some of the cool Google things that those students are doing. So it's built in Google Slides. We start off with our state standards, and then we have teacher notes, which is like the traditional lecture part of, and I hope it's going to let me open it, the traditional part of the class where the teacher actually lectures, and it's the meat of what the students need to know. And so each student actually gets their own copy of the notes, so they don't have to worry about writing everything down. They actually get a copy of it.
And
And
that's a Google
then,
slide, just so
it
people know.
is. Yes, it is Google Slides. And then one of the most exciting things that I talked this teacher into doing is he does a class notes. Now, I have deleted all the student material so that, for student names. But I want to show you what we've done is I have for each one of his classes, for each standard, it's just a docs document. For students, as he's lecturing, they all take notes on the same document. And what happens is once he finishes, the teacher can go in and correct any misconceptions. And I know you're only staring at a blank document, but I didn't want student names to be shown. But it's a great way for students to collaborate with class notes, and then the teacher can go back and correct any misconceptions.
So do you find that the kids are making corrections as well?
They do. They correct each other and they help each other. Like if, as the teacher is teaching, sometimes when you lecture, you go a little fast and they'll actually finish each other's part of the notes. And what happens is at the very end, you have this wonderfully student created document that is that they have ownership in. It's not just the teacher notes, it's the class notes, which everybody can view and everybody can add to. And then the teacher's there to make sure the content is accurate. And if they've forgotten anything, it's a really cool tool that the students like a lot.
So they're basically taking the teacher notes and kind of summarizing it into the class note document.
That's right. And
as
the teacher's teaching, anything that he says that's not on the slides, or they'll even reference, okay, so the map is on slide 17. If he's talking about the map and what he says about the map, they'll put slide 17, and then they'll add whatever they think is important for that moment.
Okay, so let me ask you this question. Why put it in a Google Doc? Why wouldn't you just use the Google slide deck?
So the reason that we do it that way, and you could use Google Slides, but the reason is because he teaches 3 different U.S. history classes. So I guess the reason that we do that is because the class notes are specific to all of those classes, and they can see them as they go. In other words, somebody from another class doesn't add to that, if that makes sense.
Right. I gotcha. Yep, that makes sense.
Yeah, so that's kind of why we do that. And then we have, now this key term. So you'll notice that we have some key terms here, and the students define them, and then they put an image. And then we go to the Flippity, which we talked about Flippity before, but Flippity is a really cool Google Sheets add-on. And what it does is it gives you all of the terms right here that they're supposed to know, and they can match and, you know, do all these little games with it to help them learn them. And then there is, in Google Forms, there is an assessment for them to make sure that they know how to do that. Now, once they finish studying, the students take the Google Forms as if it were a quiz. In other words, it's not, they can't just look back at the Flippity, if that makes sense. As we go through, you'll notice that there are different things, and each standard is a little different. Here's an infographic. But then we come to this teacher teaches with clips of YouTube. So if you click on this and you open up the Google form, what it does is it tells you, it asks them to watch a simple short YouTube video, and then they have questions to answer. So one of the concepts that the teacher's trying to make sure that they do is they actually listen to the video and learn the questions that are going on in the video. And then, of course, there's immediate, you know, they know whether they've gotten it right or not from the Google form. And each Google form is a little different. Like this one, I think, has 3 or 4 questions, and they're usually pretty short. They're not like 20-minute videos or anything like that. So they're pretty short to be able to do. One of the things that we found with our students that do this is that the kids like the different kinds of things that they can watch, and it's not just constantly reading. So with all the learning styles that we have, you know, some people prefer reading, some people prefer viewing. So it kind of mixes it up a little bit, and that's a very positive thing.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you give the content in different styles, you're going to target
right,
you know, the different learning
One
styles for the students.
of the things now this class is for a U.S. history class, and in our state of Georgia, we have an EOC for this class. And for this, one of the concepts that the students have to do is they have to be able to look at a cartoon or a map or an infographic, and they have to be able to answer a content question with it. So what I did when I built this for the teacher is you click on the picture, and it goes to a Google form. and the picture is there again, and it's more of, it's not a multiple choice, but it's more of a free response. And what happens is the teacher pulls up all the free response questions from where the students have chimed in the Google Sheets, and they talk about it. So then it becomes a class discussion. And one of the positives about this is, you know, you could just throw up the picture, the cartoon on the Promethean board and just have an out loud discussion. But one of the great things about the Google form is it allows everybody to have a voice before the group discussion. So you can kind of see that, you know, and I'm not real good with US history, so I don't know the content that I'm looking at here, but you know, something about the Indians here, and we're looking at, you know, the picture. Every student gets an opportunity to talk about it. Then the teacher is showing them all the responses, and then they come to a consensus of what might could be on our test.
That's really, I like that a lot because, like you said, you're giving the students the voice,
Right.
and they're able to maybe be a little bit more honest or open, you know,
Right.
digital, and you know, and you're again digitizing everything, so it's easy for you to go into the response sheet, read it, and get some feedback, and you know, move on
Right.
move on to the next student. Like everything is right there. I just love it. I really do. I
Right.
really
You know, one of
I
the things that
love it. If I
this,
was teaching, this is what I would do. If I was
right.
teaching like a
It,
traditional class, this is what I would do with all my students as well.
right. One of the things that I do when I'm making this history stuff is I wonder why math, because it's so cool. And you do so many great that this teacher, after each of his students have gone in and filled out the Google, he actually kind of displays it, and it becomes this great class discussion. So sometimes it's used like as an opening or a closing in the class as well, which is really great. And then there are some just graphic organizers, and they're all based on the standard. And then I want to show you, there's, you know, like different kinds. There's Venn diagrams. There's, you know, all different kinds. And then you come to a flag, which is a standard-based quiz over the material before this. And this is one of those, and I'll show you the questions, but it is just, it doesn't have any help in the Google form. In other words, it is an assessment, an assessment for them to see if they've learned what they should have learned henceforth in the slide deck. And so if they haven't learned that, then they have the opportunity to go back. If they have, then they get to move on. Now, these questions sometimes have maps or cartoons or visuals. I think I picked one that actually doesn't have any of those, but sometimes they do have them. And there are several of the video quizzes and the map standards-based quizzes embedded in each one of these. Now, unlike my math slide deck is done by topic. So I drop one of those each day. And while I built both of these, I chose to do the history. This is the whole entire standard in one slide deck. So it takes the students more than a day just to get through the slide deck. So it actually covers all of the material in one standard. So this teacher has 23 standards. Therefore, he drops 23 lessons versus my 80-something lessons that I drop in a given semester.
So let me see if I follow you here.
Okay.
This is the standard that has X amount of slides on it.
Right.
Not necessarily the lesson or the unit.
Right. It's not the unit. It is only the standard. And what I decided to do, and maybe it was just the idea of not having to drop a lesson every day to make it easier. This particular teacher was not sold on Google Classroom or the digital world until after I made a couple of the lessons, and then he jumped on board. So it took him, and you know, many teachers, until they see it with their own content, it's hard for them to understand kind of what it would look like in their classroom. So what I did was I just did one whole standard, and it's actually 23 slides, and each slide deck is different. Not all of them have 23 slides, but this, I think standard one is maybe 2 or 3 days, maybe, and whereas a math one is just 1 day.
Oh, okay. So, but this is all the same content though,
Yes,
right?
ma'am. It's all the same standard. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. No,
Right.
but I mean, like, I guess it's the same. Is it all the same topic?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I know it's U.S. history, but is it like I'm not an expert in history, but
Right.
like,
So this is the early English settlements. And so everything in this slide deck has to do with only standard one, comparing development, early English and colonization in the 17th century.
okay.
So it's just the standard versus, see, like in math, I would have a lesson on just mercantilism and transatlantic trade, and then we would move on. But I think it's because in math there are problems to work out versus like history where it's just so content driven.
Yeah, it depends on where you're at too. Like you said, you're in Georgia, I'm in New Jersey, so the standards, the way they're written are obviously
Right.
going to be different too. So that's why I was kind of questioning you on
I
that
get
because
that. Right.
in Jersey it's a little bit different. But I get what you're doing. Like it's still
Right.
you're still digitizing it, and basically you just kind of made like a big hyper slide.
That's right.
Yeah, yeah.
Over the whole standard. Yes, that's exactly what I did.
Yeah, you
Um,
hyperside it, and then
yeah.
you branched off into Google Forms, and then I'm assuming in Google Forms you have branched forms as
I
well.
do. Right. And
Yeah.
I'm going to get to those in just a second. Yes. And then we also have maps on the state test that the students have to be able to understand and answer questions about. So here is a free response, and this would be like the closing to the standard. So remember how the political cartoon was like the beginning conversation for the students? This would be like the closing. Everybody takes part in answering, and then the teacher leads a discussion as the correct answer is put up. To make sure that everybody understands. And it's another Google form, and it has the picture again, and it's just a free response. It'll load in a second, and it just has a free response. But it just gives them an idea so everybody gets an opportunity to try.
Wow. Now let me ask you this. So every form that you have has its own separate response sheet.
Yes, ma'am.
So I can imagine your Google Drive.
Yeah, it's a little crazy. Yeah.
Well, you have to
It's
be
a little
really
crazy.
organized, I'm sure.
Yeah, it is. And, that's one of the things when I'm training my teachers, I always make sure that when you start building things in Google, I always go to the folder that I want to find it in and start there and open my document, because otherwise it would just be crazy.
Yeah. Yeah. It'll all
Um,
be up at the top at my drive. Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Right. So then I also talked to this particular teacher into stealing the idea. You'll remember in my math, the two truths and a lie. And in history, this works out really amazing, because when you look at the question, what happened is I made it looks, you can remember maybe from the math, here's that same picture, and here are the questions, and one of those is not true, and I don't actually know the correct answer, but actually 3 is the correct answer. And then the student has the second question of, now justify your choice, because we don't want the students just to say, well, I don't know, let me just choose A, because I want, there should be some free response questioning with why that's true. And remember that one of the best things about Google Forms is that once the students submit the Google form, they know whether they've gotten it right or not. And in my classroom and in my high school, my students care about their work when they're doing it, not the next day when I can grade a paper and give it back to them. And so that's a huge part, because if a student knows that they've missed the question, they'll go back and read the question, and that's learning too. Even though they've missed it, they'll remember for the next time, which is really positive in my opinion. So this Two Truths and a Lie has several different concepts and different maps that could be seen on the state test with specific questions being asked. And you'll notice that they're all aligned right here to the element of the standard. The Two Truths and a Lie have become very popular in history, and I feel like it's one of the results of this particular teacher has amazing test scores. And I feel like one of the reasons is because the ability to be able to see missed it and why you missed it.
So when they fill out the form, they're getting immediate feedback right away.
Yes, ma'am.
And how are you doing that? Like, so if they are responding to an open-ended question,
so the teacher,
how are you marking that correct or incorrect?
Okay, so the multiple choice part is what is actually graded. The teacher goes in and reads the free response and corrects any misconceptions.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, because in free response, you can't write a paragraph and Google mark it right or wrong.
Yeah, so, you have to do it manually. That's why I was asking, like, what?
Right.
So the multiple choice question, which is statement 1, 2, or 3.
Right. And then we don't want the students just to, I feel like the justification is an important piece of this, because you don't want them to just randomly guess and not have to justify. And even though it's not great, you're reading corrects that misconception. Are you there, Kim?
You there?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, your audio went out.
Okay, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
All right. So then the last thing in the U.S. history slide deck is a self-assessment. And I feel like self-assessments are very important. One more time, it's a Google form. Now, you'll remember the math self-assessment looks a little different. Let me show you real quickly. The math self-assessment is actually, I want them to write something, and I want them to be able to do something. And in this history class, the self-assessment is a Google form. And so it literally is just, how do you feel about the content? And feel about it? I got it. I have more questions. What are your questions? And do you have anything that's kind of sticking with you? So the feedback that the students give you, it's an amazing tool, because what happens is a quiet student that won't raise their hand will be glad to write something. And then in those quick moments when you have a minute to talk to students individually, it gives you a chance to build the relationship that you can with that student, and they become more comfortable with talking to you. And I really love this tool for that reason. I've built more student relationships with digital material than I ever did teaching full class for the full time, because it's like you're a presenter the whole time, or you're the lead person in the show, and that's not the way it should be. The students should be leading, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you digitize your workflow, you're definitely giving all the students the opportunity of really giving you like an honest feedback.
Right.
I've done that as well with different things that I've done in my class, and the students, and I tell them, like, I'm at a middle school, so the age difference is huge. You're at the high school level,
right?
But I tell them, listen, I respect your opinion. If you didn't like anything, you have to really use kind words, constructive criticism,
right?
Tell me really why you didn't like it.
At the high school level, it's so hard because
it's hard, but
don't want to talk to you.
No, they don't.
They don't trust the teachers, and you kind of have to build that relationship.
Yeah.
So I really do love this self-assessment, and I love the fact that the teacher can look over it almost as the students are doing it, so that if they want to go over and answer the question, and like in my math class, I don't say, oh, Kim, you had a question, let me answer it. I just, as a closing remark, I answer that student's question, and nobody knows whose question
Right.
it was.
Yeah, and that's
So,
what keeps it,
right. So
anonymous.
the other thing that I want to show you in the U.S. history class, and then we'll be done with that, is I want to show you, I have been making these drag and drops, and this is a really great one because it's a timeline. Now, it's not self-corrective, it's just in Google Forms, but these are dropped in each one of the slide decks. And the students kind of pair up and do them. So you'll notice that, and I'm sure that this one's not right, but I'm just going to put it there. I don't know when that is, but and then what they do is they kind of, it's like a think, pair, share.
I got you. They adjust it.
Right. And then and they can just adjust what they're doing, and they can be able to talk about the content, which is really great as well. And then there's another one, which is the choose correctly. Now, remember, we're gearing up for a state test. So what we're doing is, you'll notice that there are multiple red checks here. So if this took place in 1968, there's the red check. If this one took place in 1968, which I know that one did not, but if it did, then it would move, you would just move on. And again, remember that the teacher can go in through Google Classroom, and I chose to make the correction with the red check so that you can spot check it really fast, and again, clear up any misconception, which is super cool to do. Again, the kids can do this, together, or what I choose to do in my classroom, and this teacher does, is they give them a minute to do it. Then they give them a minute to share and make any corrections that they want to make after talking to a friend.
So this is their notes. Each student gets their own copy of this.
Yes, each student gets their own copy. Yes. But I wanted to show you, and the drag and drops are all a little different. Some of them are timelines. Some of them are like things that happened in 1968. And what you do is you just sort them under which president, or whatever. And it does help that if the students can talk about it, if that makes, it'll, once you put what you think, and then if they can compare, that's a good thing.
Yeah, no, I think this is a great activity for the kids, because it's kind of, it's reinforcing the lesson and the content in a Google slide where you're dropping and dragging. So
right now, this teacher
activity, I really like it. I like how you set it up.
Right. This teacher uses it a lot for an EOC review. So we're getting ready for EOC in 3 weeks now. And so what will happen is, one day, there's actually a slide deck without the answers. Like, this is a slide with the answers, but there's one without the answers. You drop all of them. You give the kids a few minutes to work on their own. Then you give them a few minutes, and then this teacher shares them on the big board, and they talk about them, and they do them together to make sure that they're accurate, which is a great activity, because it's hard to review for a state test doing the same thing day in, day out. You got to mix it up some.
Did you ever consider using Pear Deck, Google Slide add-on?
Yes. So I want to use Pear Deck, but at my school, we are not allowed to connect our phones to the Wi-Fi. So for me to be able to run Pear Deck like I want to be able to use my phone to be able to use that. So I haven't used it yet, but it's on one of the things I've been working on that I want to move into.
I don't. Do you have to use a mobile phone? I thought that you can do that all within the.
I think you can, but I like to walk around.
Oh, okay.
So I want to be wireless.
I gotcha.
Yeah. So I guess that's kind of where I'm going with that.
Yep. No,
Yeah.
I think the activity is well
Yeah.
laid out. It's organized nicely. I like how you have the drag and drop, and
Yeah.
everything is just right in there, which is awesome because they
Right.
don't really have to go looking for stuff. They get the notes, they get
Right.
the unit or the lesson or the
Right.
standard, and everything just kind of branches off from there.
Right.
So
Um,
it's really well thought out.
I think it works really well. The kids seem to like it, and the test scores prove that they've learned. This particular teacher lost a parent in the spring, this time last year, and actually missed about a third of the semester, and he still led his school in state test scores.
Oh, wow.
And I was kind of helping on the back end of Google Classroom, like dropping the lessons and kind of answering some questions here and there. But, for a teacher to miss 30 something days of a 90-day semester because of the death of a parent and the kids not suffer is pretty significant.
Yeah, that goes to show you that your workflow is working
Yeah,
and
exactly.
it's effective, and
Right,
that's what matters. It really doesn't matter like what tool you use. It's
right,
really how you use it and how you're incorporating it in your class and how you're
right,
getting the kids on board with it. So,
right,
Pear Deck, Poll Anywhere, Google
right,
Slides, it doesn't really matter
right.
as long as everything is there and available to
Exactly.
them. That's what counts. But this is unbelievable. Again, you blew my mind using
So,
your hyper slides and your forms, and it's just a nice workflow. And I'm sure, when you don't use it in class, the kids are looking for it, right?
they are. They don't like it. And they definitely and the other thing is that students, once they learn the routine of the class, that's comfort for them.
Mhm.
They understand, okay, this is what I got to get done and this is how we're going to do it, and that's very comfortable for them too. I want to take a minute if we have time. I want to show you so sometimes I have digital breakouts. And because I train teachers, this is just one that I pulled up to show you. But I want to make sure I've been building some math ones and some US history ones. And the US history ones are super cool because it's like the movie National Treasure, the Chromebook, which is just amazing to me. But I know that a lot of people use Google. I use Google Forms for student feedback to give them an assessment quickly and effectively. But I also want to make sure that in this digital breakout, there are clues. Like you can see that there are letters that are written different, so that'll be one of the clues. And I already know the digital breakouts are about. But when you go to the Google form, if I scroll down a little bit, here's actually the Google form. So when I try to if it'll let me publish it real quick. It may not. Okay. So anyway, I go to the Google form, and the direction lock is done with the validation. In other words, if I choose to do this like the way that the students would see it, they can type in the directions and it will tell them that it's wrong. So if I type in the correct response of the question, it opens the lock. So if I type in Google, which is the answer, it won't let them get it. But if I type Google, all caps, it will let them unlock the lock. And I've learned with Google Forms, I really love this when I'm using a digital breakout because I let them do clues. And I know that this one's I was teaching some teachers about Google Classroom, but my students really like it. And the competitiveness between them is amazing. And Kim, I know you know how to do this with the Google Locks, but it's one of my very favorite tools.
Yeah, I let this could be a whole nother show in itself, digital breakouts. So,
Right,
but yeah, the option in the form that you're referring to is
right.
data validation, and of course, it's built into the form.
Right.
There's some options in there that automatically check if it's an email address entered. You don't have to really do
Right.
much. But if you want to customize it, you have that ability in there as well. It's just a nice feature of forms that lets you, you know, do that type of verification on the data entered. So
Right.
yeah,
I really
maybe we'll do a digital breakout
okay.
like the
Yeah.
next time, and then because I have a Google, I call it a Google Playground,
Uh-huh.
and I did it for the students just to like get familiar with like different Google apps and what they do.
Oh,
So it'd be cool
fun.
to see what you did for classroom.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll meet back up again and compare.
Yeah, that would be fun. I
Okay.
definitely will. Yeah. So the last thing that I want to show you is another way that I use Google Forms. So now I want to remind you from our last time that we talked. Remember, I went through the slide deck and there were these questions that I asked my students to do, but then there's this pencil icon. And the pencil icon opens a Google form. Now, some examples in my math class, they don't get the answer. It's a question and I want them to come up with the answer, and I want them to practice. But I also want to give them that ability to know whether they're getting it right or not. Not on every question, but on a couple of questions in each slide deck. So what I do is I call it Student You Try, and I have a Google form, and they just answer the question in the Google form. Now, of course, the reason again for the Google form is because they get immediate feedback and they're not waiting on me to get to them to make sure that they've gotten it right. Now, these aren't necessarily grades. They're just an assessment to see if the students, they're like just making sure or giving the students confidence. So one of the things that I've just started doing is I've compiled a new slide deck for a test review. And this is an amazing concept that I love so much because this happens to be my Unit 3 geometry material. And you'll notice that the topics are all just in a chart, a table. And when it takes you to one of the slides over here. So if I go to maybe this one, it takes me to the question that was already previously done as in review, and the students get to try to answer the question. If they get that question right, then I feel like they know how to do, in this case, 45, 45, 90 triangles, and they can move on to a new topic, which could be trig ratios. And so one of the things that I do right before a summative assessment in my class is I create a you try, a student you try. And Kim, one of the things that I really want to point out is sometimes when people look at all of this, they're like, oh my gosh, how do you have time to do all this? Notice that in the slide deck, you see how the colors are all different because all I did was copy them from the past lesson. So I'm not really making anything new. I'm just kind of pulling it together as a student review. So if a student can go through and answer all 12 of these questions with little or no trouble, then they are prepared for my test. If they can't, then I also want to point out real fast, I don't know if I can get to it real fast, but in the review, hold on a minute. In the review, I have, that's one part of the review, but the other part of the review, if I can find it real fast, I have so many things. So like I have the gift right here, so here is the gift file for each one. So if they don't know how to do 30, 60, 90, for example, then what opens up is the actual problem, and it shows them how to do the problem, and then they get to try another problem. So I don't know if I explained all that well, but the idea is that I can give my students 12 or 15 problems, and almost without waiting for me at all, they can go through and find their weakness and their strength, and we can spend time on the weakness. So I kind of build, and you'll notice that the titles of these are the same. So therefore, they all match up. So the students know exactly what to go to if they don't understand.
Yeah, I would imagine that you'd have to have that type of consistency so they don't get
Yeah.
confused. So, yeah. No, I call it activity boards, but I use
Uh-huh.
activity boards as well. Um,
Right.
so I do like that, but I use it differently than you do. That could be
Right.
another show as well.
Right. Right.
But yeah, no, this is like all like I just can't believe how much you've done with digitizing everything. Like you covered like every single aspect of your workflow and digitized it and just made it available to the kids, whether you're using, a form, a slide, a GIF, an
Right.
assessment, anything, a drag and drop. I mean, it's just amazing what you did. Like you just really took your papers and you just turned them into a digital workflow. You didn't scan them in as PDFs, you didn't annotate
Right.
them. Like you really just recreated everything and just,
Right.
and now like you have a really great resource that you can use over and over again. And if you have to make minor changes to it, it's very simple to do.
It is.
As
Right.
long as you are organized and know where everything is, I can imagine that would be half of it. But this is awesome.
Right.
I really do appreciate you showing it all because
You're welcome.
it's definitely gives the audience like a different perspective of using slides and forms.
Right.
Because you can hyperlink everything and hyper slides, and
Right.
you're really using like every bit of what in your workflow,
Right.
which
You
is
know,
nice.
a
You
lot of
got
times,
the
oh,
images, you got the forms, you got the
right.
GIFs, you got the videos. I mean, like you just got everything in here. I can't
Right.
even imagine like just like to build it from scratch. I know it's a lot of work, but once it's done, it's done. Then you just refer to it throughout the year,
Right.
and you have it forever. So for
You
me,
do.
I would the hardest part as a technology teacher is like convincing the teachers to do something like this
I,
because they're so short on time.
right. But
So
you
like
know,
that's the question. Like, you have to they need support. You would have to help them. But I think
right.
once they're on board, I think they're rewarded back twofold,
Right.
I try to tell
And
them.
that's the big thing. I know that when you look at this and people go, "Oh my gosh, how do you have time for this?" But the thing is, I don't have to worry about copying anything, and that takes time. I don't
Yeah,
have to worry about making a worksheet I've got to build the worksheet and then I've got to go and copy it. Then I've got to grade it. I mean, I know it does look different and it's intimidating a little bit, but honestly, maybe because I love making them, I don't see it as work. I'm not sure, but I feel like I'm working less than I did when I was using paper, and it's so consistent for my students. And let me tell you, high school students love the fact that their notebook is in a password. So once, as soon as they just log in and everything is right there. They don't have to worry about trying to find this sheet or that sheet. And that's a great thing too. And it very much prepares them for college because that's what
yeah,
college is.
I agree. I
Yeah.
totally agree. Yeah. No, this is great. Thanks, Linda, for
You're
sharing.
welcome.
I
I'm
really,
gonna unshare my screen if
I
I can.
really can't, thank you enough. I know from the first time when you were on, there was a lot of, positive feedback in the show notes, and people left comments and things along the
Right.
way. They were contacting me, and I know I was tagging you on Twitter and stuff. So I'm sure you're going to get the same type of traffic
That's
again,
great.
you
Yeah.
know. But anything that you want to share, like you could put into the agenda or the show notes, anything that you want to put in there, so to make it less, to make it more available for the audience in case they want to contact you or whatnot.
Okay.
But
Okay.
this was awesome. I really,
Yeah.
it's nice to see that you the first show you did your math classroom. Obviously, you're a math teacher, so you showed social studies now. So it was
Right.
nice to see how you incorporated the social studies content area into the digital workflow. It's just, you just covered everything. Like, it's just amazing what you did.
So
Really.
next time I'll do lit because I have 11th grade lit that I've been working on with the teacher.
Okay,
And we
that's fun.
made this super cool hyper slide over the, I mean, I say movie because I'm a non-reader, but it's really a book, The Great Gatsby. And she was teaching The Great Gatsby, and we made all these super cool digital activities, and the kids loved reading it so much.
Because it's
And
different. It's
it's so
it's on
different.
their wavelength, you know.
Right,
You don't want the
right,
paper
right, right,
stuff anymore,
right.
you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, maybe next time we'll talk, but
Okay.
we can do a show like that, or if you wanted to do the digital breakout, whatever,
Yeah, I think I want to do the digital breakouts first. Yeah.
that'll be fun because
Yeah.
then we can compare too, you know.
Right. That's what I want to do. Yeah. That
All
sounds
right,
good.
let me wrap up the show. So what I'm
Okay.
going to do real quick is share my screen. And can you see my screen?
I can.
All right. So if you go to the sweettalk.com, it's the SUITE talk.com. You can see all of the past episodes. So if you click on the episode page, you can see all of the past episodes and get caught up on what was presented on my show. And Lynda's show and show notes will be here as well. Um, I have a link here for idea for Jamboard. So anybody that knows me knows I love Jamboard, and this is a page just dedicated to Jamboard. Check out my idea for Jamboard, and if you have an idea on how you are using it, please fill out this Google form and share it so that we can pay it forward and help others. You can subscribe to my YouTube channel, newsletter, and you can also listen on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, and Google Play Music. And with that said, I'm going to go back to Lynda. I got to find you first.
That's okay.
There you are. Okay.
Okay.
And that's a wrap.
Awesome.
So I would like to say thank you again for being on. Until next time, thank you for tuning in. This is Kim Matina. Have a great evening. Bye.